Welcome back to Hi Haley.
Thank you. It's great to be back again. It seems like I'm here every week.
Again. So this time I have an idea and we're going to start doing a question based off what episode this is. So with that being said, this is the big 21. So Matt, what did you do on your 21st birthday?
Well, on my 21st birthday, I went to the library.
I expected more from you.
Well, the at my college, University of Minnesota, there used to be a bar called the library. So we tell our parents
So
that
the
we're going to the
library.
library. Yep.
Okay. Go first.
Yeah. What did you do on your 21st?
On my 21st, I went to the DMV because I was really excited to have, the horizontal license.
Mm,
So what better place to sit in line at the DMV?
okay.
All right. Well, unfortunately, it's not our 21st birthday today. So instead, we're going to be demoing a cool feature using Power Automate. And so this one today, we're going to walk through creating an approval workflow for invoices using Power Automate. And you're going to let us know some cool features of that and where we can use that and how we can do it ourselves.
Yep, sounds good. So, what we have up right now is Business Central. So, we're going to show a invoice or PO invoice workflow um, broken out from the internal engine in Business Central. There's an internal workflow that you can set up there. Kind of limited, but the nice part is that you can hook into that workflow engine through Power Automate, where you can pretty much do whatever you would like to do with that. Now, the nice part about this process we're going to go through today is that this can also technically apply to F&O as well. So there are hooks in F&O where you can basically say, I want to connect to this particular workflow. It'll get a business event, and then you can go ahead and process the workflow from there. And then basically you're going to tell the whatever ERP you triggered it from, whether this was approved or denied, and then you can put some notes in the actual workflow as well to say kind of what the approval process was. Just to kind of start, we will navigate over to Power Automate. So I have a flow already kind of pre-set up here, but I'll walk through the different steps of kind of how it's set up. So the first thing we have here is the trigger action. And when you set up your Power Automate flow, there's a bunch of different trigger actions you can use from Business Central. But we'll just use this one today. So basically what you're going to say is what environment you're going to connect to. So I'm connected to my demo environment. And you'll say what company in Business Central that you're going to be connecting to. Just using the out-of-the-box demo environment. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is say what the trigger condition is. So the thing that I like to use this for is basically say what type of purchase document it's going to be. So you're going to select the document type as the first condition, and this is the field that you're going to be using. And then the header first condition is basically what the value is. So the field dropdown, you can see there's a list of all the different fields that you can connect to. So if you wanted to trigger it based on like dollar values that you need approval for, you can do that here. But we're just going to be going through all the approvals for purchase invoices.
Now,
So
Matt, what if I wanted to make one for like a product receipt? Could I also do that?
yes, there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. So when you're setting up the actual the trigger here, um, there's like 12 different types that you can connect to. I'm just going through invoice today though.
Okay.
But in Business Central, we'll just go to the purchase invoices here, just as an example. So on an actual invoice, wherever you see this request approval tab and the send approval request, that means you can connect to it through Power Automate. So customers, vendors, kind of wherever you see this send approval request, you can use either the out of the box in platform workflow, or you can send it out to
Mhm.
Power Automate to process.
And then in D365 F&SC, I think it's like the workflow tab, or is it like manage?
Yep. So the workflow tab that you'd see up at the
Okay.
top.
Same thing.
Yep. Same thing. But the Business Central one's a little bit easier and more
Hmm.
intuitive. but the F&O one can be more powerful, as is the case with BC versus F&O and pretty
Yeah.
much anything. All right, so like I said, our trigger is just going to be off of our purchase invoices. And then what we're going to do from there is we're going to get the invoice row ID. So this is basically saying, all right, give me the row ID of this instance of the workflow so I know what to process from there. So when you're actually getting the event from Business Central, there's only like 5 fields that you can access. So what we need to do from there is then reach back into Business Central and kind of get the details of it. So what I'm doing here is using the get a row function from Business Central. So again, we're going to have it set up to connect to our right environment, our right company. And then kind of the key thing here is that the API category is always going to default to 2.0. What you're going to want to make sure you select is the workflow endpoints as the API category. And then you'll see that this workflow purchase documents is going to be available here. So we're basically connecting to the workflow purchase document table. And then we're going to use that ID that we found back in this output here, which again comes from our initial trigger. So now that I've basically grabbed all of the info that I need, we're just going to pull out a few key fields, and I'm going to put them into compose statements because they're a little bit easier to kind of visualize. So what we'll do is we'll just add a new action, and then I'm going to search for the compose action. We'll grab that here, and then when I click on inputs, we're going to now see that we have the ability to connect to any of those fields from our workflow details. So we can see what the vendor number is, who the ship to name is, so who we're actually purchasing this for, what the order date is, and we'll just grab 1 or 2 here. So let's do the vendor invoice number. And then we'll grab another one as well. Let's see what else, anything else good we got in here. The buy from vendor name, that'd be another good one. So we're just going to use these 2 for now. But the nice part about Power Automate is that we can do pretty much anything you can think of. So we can reach back into BC, grab the line level details. So if we want to publish all the lines in that actual approval workflow, we can do that. We can get the total amount on all those lines. Just for the simplicity of today, we're not going to do that because that'd be kind of repetitive. But just know that using the same kind of steps that we have earlier, this get workflow details, we can just connect to the purchase invoice table and grab the info from there as well. All right, so now that we've got our 2 fields that we want to actually be using here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now generate the actual approval step. So we're going to add an action here, and then this time we're going to search for approval. And then we're going to select our approvals action. And then what we'll see is that we can add an actual approval. So this approvals connector connects to the Microsoft approvals. As long as the user's in your Active Directory, you can basically process your approvals without an additional license. So that's really, really powerful there. If you have hundreds of users that might need to actually be approving workflows, things like that, you can do that through this tool, which can then connect to your email automatically without needing additional licenses.
So totally free.
Well, you still need a Microsoft account and everything.
Your ERP, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not an additional license that you would need to purchase for this. So we're going to say start and wait for an approval. We'll see it's going to just connect there. And then we're going to tell it what type of approval we're going to do. So we can say everyone that's on the list of approvals has to approve it for the workflow to be approved. The first person to approve it, then it'll consider the whole workflow is approved. Or we can have it wait for all responses or just a single response. or we can have it go through a subsequent step. So if you have an approval chain where it goes from like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, the purchasing director to the COO to the CEO based on approval amounts, and we can do that in the sequential approval here. But just for simplicity, we're just going to select the first one that everyone must approve. And then when I select that, we're going to have a couple more options that load here. All right, so then we're going to give it a title. So essentially what we want kind of the header details to be. So we're going to just say approval request for invoice, vendor invoice number from vendor, and we'll get the vendor name. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put that that email address in here. So I've already got a output for that. So I'm just going to select this approval email. And again, this was a step that I did earlier. But if you're grabbing the emails from like the user table in BC, you can do that here. Basically, as long as it's a valid email address in your domain, you can use that here. Now, the next thing we'll do is we'll put in the actual body of the message. So imagine it's like an email approval. The title is going to be the subject. The details is going to be the body of that email. So you can actually use Markdown for this, which is kind of nice. So it's similar to HTML. So if you want to do bolding, italics, things like that, you can do that in Markdown. You can use a Markdown generator for that to do that. But just for now, I'm going to select the same body as I had in the subject. So we're just going to paste that in here. And then what we can do as well is in the email, we can put a direct link back into the source system. So you can get through Power Automate, you can get the BC link to that, that invoice. I'm not going to show that now, but just know that that is an option. Mm-hmm. And then what you can also do is you can attach the actual invoice file. So like the PDF file, you can go and grab that back from Business Central, and then it'll be attached to the actual email that gets sent out to those users. So that's a really powerful tool for invoices as well when we're going through that approval process. And those are all handled through different actions in the out-of-the-box BC connector. Maybe we'll do another video on that someday, but just know that those options are all available.
I'll sign you up for it.
All right. All right, so now that we've got our start and wait for approval, we're now going to put it into the approval outcome section. So right now, for the testing before this, I just hard-coded approve in there. But now we're going to want the actual approval from our approval step. So this is going to be the outcome is what we want. So this is going to be either approve or reject essentially. So now what we're going to do is then we're going to tell BC what the results are. So I'm going to click my check approval status condition here. So basically I'm saying if the outcome was approved, we're going to run the action of approve workflow. If it was not approved, we're going to run the action of reject workflow. So for this one, when we're setting up our BC connector, we create a new action. We're going to first select the BC connector, and then we're going to say run action. And then what we're going to do here is, again, like all the other ones, we're going to connect to the demo environment. So by selecting the environment dropdown, then going to select the company. And then again, in our API category, we're going to make sure we select workflow endpoints. And then in here, we're going to see there's a couple different options. So we can approve the workflow, we can cancel the workflow, we can reject the workflow, or we can also get the approver. But for this one, since the approval outcome is going to be approved, I'm going to select the approve action. And then the last step we need to do is basically tell it what workflow we're going to be updating. So in this case, we're going to basically be selecting from our initial trigger. We're going to select the workflow step ID here. So that's basically telling that initial workflow that, all right, we've gone through our processes in Power Automate. Now we're going to update it with the actual end result. Now, if it's not equal to approve, we're going to run the same steps, But this time, instead of selecting approve, we're going to select reject. And that's all there is to it. So then all we need to do is click save. And then the nice part about this is that Power Automate, once you save this initial workflow and it recognizes that you have this purchase document approval as requested, it's going to set up that connection automatically in BC, so there's no steps you need to take for it or anything like that. Then what we can do is we can go back to our purchase invoice here in Business Central. And I'll just start from the beginning here so we can see what that looks like. So we're going to go to purchasing, purchase invoices, the form we're on. We're going to then select what our invoice is. And then I'm going to go to request approval and click send approval request. And now we'll see that the status is changed to pending approval. So then what we'll do is we'll just go back to Power Automate here. I'm just going to click the back button. And then we're going to go ahead and click on our flow again. And we'll now see that 14 seconds ago, my workflow kicked off. And then we're going to see that this is now in a running status. And that's because that action that we had set up was set to wait until you finish, until we're either going to approve or reject before the workflow wraps up. So if you've got workflows that are kind of sitting out there for approval, you may see this duration be a couple hours, a couple days, depending on how long it takes someone to actually run this. So then what we can also do is I'm just going to pull up Teams here, and then we're going to see that I actually got a notification directly in Teams in my activity. So it says Matt Leardahl sent you a request. And then it's going to give me those details here. So we got an approval request for invoice 107210 from the vendor First Up Consultants, which is exactly what we saw in Business Central. And then it'll have my additional details in here of what was actually requested. So I submitted the request in Business Central, and then I signed it to myself. So real world, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but for the demos, that's what we're doing here. And then what we're also going to see, all right, so what we're also going to see is that you can get the actual requests via email as well. So we'll see that we still have the same approval request for our invoice, what the vendor is, and then we'll see that we also have an approve and reject option to reject or approve it directly from the email here. So really nice. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on the Teams app, and then you can also do it from the Power Automate app if you have that installed on your phone. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to approve it from Teams. So back on Teams here, we'll just say approved, and I can go ahead and click approve. And then now we'll see that the status is changed to approve. And then I also got a message from myself that the invoice was approved. And the nice part about this is it's also going to show you the history. So in this environment, this particular Power Platform environment, this is the first time I've ever done an approval. But as you set this up yourself and have more approvals in your history, you can see all of those in here.
Like a history for you.
Exactly, yep. So then we'll just go back to Power Automate here. I'm going to go ahead and click refresh. And now we're going to see that the actual Power Automate flow has been completed. So it took 5 minutes for me to go through that approval process. You'll notice that there's a couple minutes cut out there from editing, but this is the exact time that it took us to go ahead and approve that. And now if I go back to Business Central, and then we just refresh this page, we're going to see that the status of my invoice has changed to released, which will let me then go ahead and process additional steps on this invoice. So that's really all there is to it. It's really nice that you can do whatever you can do in Power Platform. You can basically kick it out to there, do anything you want, call third-party services. You can use the out-of-the-box approval step. You can do things like post Slack messages, post Teams messages in groups, whatever you'd like to do in Power Automate, you can do as part of this invoice approval process.
This is so much better than the out-of-box workflow in either ERP.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, Matt, we'll get you back on the show because you promised you're in the middle of this. So thank you for joining. Hi, Haley.
Yeah, no problem.